It doesn't quite work for me. Cameron, you were standing tall up there. Good morning, everybody. We're talking about our cycle of loving our neighbors, getting into the lives of our neighbors, holding them, talking to them, building relationships with them, and then moving them to loving God, getting them to fall in love with God, to worship, to come here and to get to know who God is, and to introduce them to God who created all of us. And then moving them to serving others, getting into the lives of people and helping. This morning we were reading scriptures in class about, Paul tells the Ephesians to stop thieving, stop stealing with your hands, put your hands to work so that you can help those who are in need. There is power in serving other people. Our theme this year is God first. Our theme verse comes from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 7. You shall teach them, that is the commandments, teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. The different quarters are set up this way. The first quarter, God and you. We're working right now on building our relationship with God. And then God and family. Working on our relationship with God as a family, and then God and work, in the workplace. How do we bring God into the workplace and interact with people and teach people and talk to people with conviction about who Jesus is? And then God and others, people beyond. It is a very big world. There are a lot of people in it, and we have a lot of opportunity to bring a lot of people to Christ. I'm just going to quickly put these up here and end on the one that we're talking about today. Today we're talking about fearless. I like this one because I need to hear it. So sometimes the sermons that resonate most with me are the ones that I need to hear the most. Because a lot of times, believe it or not, I'm gripped by fear in different areas, particularly, ironically, when it comes to talking to people with conviction about God, and that's why we're here on this planet Earth. Some of you may or may not have seen this picture before. This was dubbed one of the most moving pictures in recent history around the world. A lot of people didn't really know the backstory to this. This is a young boy, the age of 12, from Brazil, named Diego Frazo Turcato. He is playing at the funeral of his teacher. His teacher pulled him at a young age out of poverty, believed in him, and began working with him, teaching him instruments, music, what he loved, what his passion was. And he became exceptionally well and performed, from what I understand, all over the place. I don't know if it was all around the world or all around Brazil, but he became a very, very gifted young musician at the age of 12. This picture, I think, tells a very deep story, and a lot of us connect with it without even knowing the backstory. You can just see this picture, and you can see the passion and the sadness and the love and all of that wrapped up into his expression on his face. I did a little bit of digging and was trying to find out what the rest of the story was, because when I first saw this picture, I saw it on one of my friends posted it on Facebook the other day, and before I even read the story, I was really moved by it. And so I did a little bit of digging, and actually it's really hard to find the rest of the story. This is one of those moments that there was a famous photographer. He captured a very intimate moment, and then the world was moved by it, and then kind of life goes on for the rest of us. But for me, I wanted to know a little bit more. And from what I can tell, there were several stories about this, but I don't know if it's true, but as far as I can tell, it is. But the story is that less than a year after this photograph was taken, Diego passed away from leukemia. And I thought about that because I used to be so gripped by the fear of death when I was young. It kind of consumed me. There were some Sundays, I don't know if I ever talked to my parents about it, but there were some Sundays where I would go down and lock myself in the bathroom and I would cry because I just worried that somebody was going to die. Somebody in my life was going to die. It crippled me with fear and anxiety, and I don't know what it was. There was nothing tragic that happened in my life revolving around death. It was something that I thought about, and it consumed my brain. What happens after somebody dies? What's it like? What happens? And so my mind would race thinking about these things. And so I no longer have that fear. I don't fear death. I don't fear dying. I don't fear those things. And I look at little Diego here, and you can see and feel the sadness as he's saying goodbye to his teacher who passed away. And if the story is true, he passed away not even a year later. And I have to wonder what was going on through his mind. Did he have courage? Did he have strength? Did he have a noble death, knowing that his teacher fought the good fight? And so did he die with courage? We don't really know. We don't know enough about the story to know. But one thing I do know is that fear cripples us. Fear cripples us. And when we get rid of fear, and that's what our scripture is about today, when we get rid of fear, when we become fearless, we gain conviction. We gain confidence. We gain confidence knowing not only what happens after death, but we gain confidence in telling other people what happens after death. We gain confidence in sharing the gospel with other people. We gain confidence in stepping into the lives when we see people hurting. And instead of saying, well, I don't really want to step on people's toes, or maybe this wouldn't be accepted well, or maybe they'd be offended. Instead of doing that, we have the confidence to enter into their lives and say, I can see you're hurting right now, and I'm going to help. And it just becomes second nature. There are six of the most crippling words in the English language, and I think these 6 words lead to fear. I think they instill fear, and I think they become so crippling that when we hear these words, and this starts at a young age, when we hear these words, we start to doubt everything. And those 6 words are, come on, what are you doing? Some of you will know there's some context when I start talking about this. Our kids are in sports. This is where I hear this phrase the most. And our kids, we talk pretty openly about parents who get up in their kids' faces and yell at them, and they're like, come on, what are you doing? And you can see the kids shut down and melt into the floor. You can see the passion leave them. What once was joy and excitement, what once was anticipation for practices and for the sport, what was a love for the sport becomes a crippling effect. You see the shoulder slump forward. You see performance take a nosedive. You see that self-confidence drive into the ground. And I feel like we don't do this just in sports. We do this in all aspects of life, where we tell people back in the sound booth, come on, what are you doing? You tell people, right? When we tell people this, when teachers ride kids for their grades, or parents ride kids for their grades, come on, you can do better than this. What are you doing? That's not really motivational. What they hear is, you've messed up, and you're not good enough to keep doing more. We were designed by God, by our Creator, to work off of confidence, as a motivator. Confidence helps us. Fearlessness, overcoming fear, helps us to perform well. It brings peace of mind. It helps us realize that mistakes are just mistakes. We talked about this in class this morning. When Paul writes the Ephesian church, he's writing Christians saying, you guys shouldn't be having all these, escapades. You shouldn't be getting drunk. You shouldn't be having all of these wild parties. You shouldn't be using coarse language and debauchery and, all these things. And so I asked people in my class, I said, what's the assumption that, when Paul's writing this to the Ephesian Christians, what's the assumption? Well, the assumption is they're doing it. The baptized Christians are living this wild life, and Paul's like, all right, you guys probably shouldn't be doing these things. There's a better way. Instead of stealing, why don't you work with your hands and work and help people out and give that money to poor people? Paul's not belittling them. He's not saying, come on, what are you doing? Paul's writing them saying, I want to encourage you to be better people. Christ died for you, and so I want to encourage you to do better. Paul's giving them confidence, and Paul's helping them to live a better life and to teach other people about Jesus Christ in all of their flaws and all their mistakes. And so if we applied this principle, I think life would go much better for us. I think we'd see less people shutting down, melting down, having anxiety issues, depression issues, suicidal tendencies, all these problems that we see. I think the world would be a much more peaceful place. And so we're going to go into our text this morning. I'm going to back up a little bit and read what comes before what Cameron read this morning. By the way, listen to John's language. As he addresses these believers, he doesn't say, come on, what are you doing? He says, beloved. Often he refers to them as my little children. Little children. It's this endearing term, and he's encouraging them and he's building their confidence. He says, beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this, the love of God was made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. Do you hear what he's saying? Nobody has ever seen God. In the history of mankind, nobody has ever seen God face to face, but we know this, that if we love one another, God is remaining in us. He abides in us. If we love each other, we really have seen God. Verse 13, by this we know that we abide in him and he in us, because he has given us of his Spirit. Let me ask you baptized believers, do you really have confidence? One, that you're saved, and two, that you can tell other people beyond the shadow of a doubt, unbelievers included, atheists, it doesn't matter. Can you look them in the eye and say, I have no doubt, I have no question beyond anything in the world that when I die, I know exactly where I'm going and who I'm going to spend eternity with? Can you tell people with the utmost confidence and conviction that you know exactly where you're going and why? And if you can't, that means that there's somewhere inside of you, there's fear that's taken over, or doubt, or something. And so John is taking this away from people. John's telling his beloved, I'm going to give you the confidence to know that beyond the shadow of a doubt, this is how you know that God is inside of you. This is how you know that we abide in God and God abides in us, because he's given us of his Spirit. God sealed us with his Spirit. And we have seen and testify that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him and he in God. This is how you know. And then verse 16 up on the screen, this is where Cameron started to read. And so we have come to know and to believe the love of God, the love of God has for us, that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. He's repeating this over and over and over. If you really want to know that God is inside of you and that you're inside of God and that we're working together, start loving people. By this, verse 17, by this is love perfected within us. Not our love by ourselves. Well, I'm just a loving person. I don't really, I'm not really like this churchy person, but I'm spiritual. I know how to love people. Like, you do you do, I'll do me. I know how to love people because I'm just like a lovey person. You know what John's saying? That doesn't work. Love is perfected within us because we love God, or we love people with the love of God, and so God remains in us, and we remain in God, and love is perfected within us whenever we do this. It's got to be a godly love. It can't be, well, I'm a lovey person, and, I just kind of know how to love on people, but I don't really do that churchy thing. John's kind of putting that on the wayside and saying, no, this is how you know with confidence. Love is perfected with us so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment, because as he is, so also are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. That's not, like I said in class this morning, these are not like judgy statements. Paul's not saying, I'm going to look down your nose because if you fear, you're not really a true Christian. That's not what he's saying. He's saying if there is any ounce of fear inside of you, you're going to question everything about your salvation. You're going to question whether you're going to heaven or not. You're not going to be able to talk to people with conviction about Christ. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out all fear, and it says, I am willing and able to die right now for the sake of every person I know or don't know. I can lay my life down right now in full confidence because I know where I'm going. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. I'm going to go on just a few more verses here. John says, we love because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he's a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him, whoever loves God must also love his brother. I think this is one of the most exciting passages and motivating, because John is teaching us how to have confidence not only in salvation, but in how to love people more fully, more completely, how to do it fearlessly. And when we do it fearlessly, I promise you our relationship with God grows. Some of us are so hung up right now because life is just kicking our rear end. And so it stifles our relationship with God, and then we doubt ourselves. Am I really a good Christian? I don't pray every day. I don't read my Bible every day. I had a busy week. I felt terrible. And so we start to beat ourselves up. And John says, no. There is no fear in love. You remain in God, and God remains in you. And here's how you know it. You just step into the lives of other people and you love them. You don't offer up excuses. You don't do any of that stuff. In all of your imperfections, you love other people. I love this passage. And I think if we get this and if we instill this in our kids and our grandkids, I think if we really instill this and just teach them to fearlessly love other people, I think the world is going to be a lot brighter place. And more people are going to come to know Christ. The message is yours. If there's anybody this morning who's not yet taken the step to put Christ on a baptism, or if you have any prayer needs, you can come up as we all stand and sing the song together.